Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another rendition of Kingdoms Evolution. I am your host, Joe Finn, and I have no idea what we're going to show about today. I have absolutely none. I can't believe nothing's pissed me off so much so this week that I had to talk about it today, but nothing has. Nothing has. I loved the RFK Jr. testimony to the killers of Congress and the FDA and the Health and Human Services. I loved his words to power, words to killers. 74.6% chronic illness in our youth. And these bastards have the balls to complain to RFK Jr. about firing HHS employees. The balls. I mean, really? It boggles the mind. They've destroyed our they've destroyed our childhood. Let's let's go back to when we were to a long time ago. A long time ago, brothers and sisters. When I was a child, when I was growing up. And I liked popsicles, and there was a period of time where my weight went very high. Um, One, I can't remember the exact summer, but it was probably between, you know, 10 and 12 where just I really found the popsicle train. And I remember it was not good. It was not healthy. And then, then the teenage years kicked in and it was just too much going on to be fat. But there was a time when I had found the popsicle train and I really enjoyed sugar more so than I should have, and I ate more than I should have. Didn't exercise as much, and I was definitely at one point in time I had to be obese. I mean, I had to be an obese child at one point in time. High school I wasn't because I played water polo, so you couldn't be obese in high school. You couldn't be it and perform and function the way young boys function. You couldn't be obese. So I wasn't in high school. I wasn't obese. But how about today? 74.6%. Does that not make you sick? So that was 1976, 77. So we are in 50 years, 60, shit. 60 years later. Holy, no, 50 years later. Whew, feel better now. 50 years, so half a century later. And back in the 70s or whenever, the 70s, it was probably 15%. So they have increased child illness by 500% from, say, 15 to 75. By 5 times. They've made us sicker by 5 times. And I would be interested to go back and find out what shots they gave us as a child in 1961. Honest to God, someone asked me one time what would you say is the one moment where America turned, where you can go back to a sentient moment, a moment in time that capitulated our country to the bad guys. Because the bad guys have been running our country for a long time. Make no mistake about it. The bad guys have entrenched themselves in D.C. They've engorged themselves in D.C. And Trump he's not, he's making some headway, but he ain't getting to bone. He's still on the skin. He ain't getting to bone, and Pam Bondi is not helping. Pam Bondi was not the best attorney general. She is not. No one has been charged. No one's going to jail yet, and They have all the evidence they need to lock these people up for what they did to Trump, for his presidency, for what they did. They have everything they need to lock these people up, and all they're doing is pulling security clearance. That doesn't mean that's not going to stop them. That's not going to stop Obama. That's not going to stop Clinton. That's not going to stop John Brennan. That's not going to stop Valerie Jarrett from trying to kill Trump and put us in prison. They are at war with us. They've been at war with freedom their entire lives. They didn't play by any rule book that was fair or legal. They did everything they could to destroy our world. And we are playing by Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, what the hell are we doing, guys? We have the laws. Our forefathers gave us the laws to protect our country, to protect our republic, and Trump is not using them to protect our country. He is not. He has secured the border. He has. And he has secured Washington, D.C., and I guess you have to do that first. But for goodness sakes, Trump, these people that try to put a bullet in your head twice are still roaming the country freely. And your attorney general appears weak, which is terrible, Trump. It's terrible because when they see weakness, that just gives them an opening. And a lot of us that are out here are depending on you to not be weak. A lot of us out here have we know they got to go through you to get to us, but we got you in there, and you need to not be weak, brother. Do not be weak. Be bold. Be as bold against the people that try to put a bullet in your head as you are against Putin. As you are. So the people that you blew out of the water in Venezuela because they were bringing in drugs to kill Americans, who are the people that tried to put a bullet in your head, Trump? Who are the people that tried to put a bullet in your head? They traced one of the phones that met with the shooter to FBI headquarters. You know it. I know it. Everybody on planet Earth knows that guy, that kid, did not get up on that roof by himself. Let's just say they killed you, Trump. Let's say that bullet was successful and ended your world. What would we do? We would be in living hell. Kamala would be the president, and we'd be screwed. Trump, you've got to hold these people accountable for what they tried to do. And there's other people trying to put bullets into our republic. You've got to hold. They're at war with our freedom, our republic. You've got to stand up and hold them accountable to the Constitution of the United States of America. You've got to do it, Donald, President Trump. You've got to do it. All right. So when I was growing up, first of all, so let's just say it was 15% chronic illness. So there were we could place, like you go to any neighborhood, every block had a street hockey team. Every block played kickball. Every block had a bunch of kids playing kickball, street hockey, because everybody was healthy. Because everybody could run around and do stuff. You're telling me now that 74.6% of the kids have chronic illness. What the hell can they do? So you've got 25% of the kids that can run around and do stuff. You're not gonna have much luck with that. Good luck putting together a pickleball game or a tennis game or a soccer game or a kickball game when 75% of the kids are sick about something. They got asthma. They're obese. They've got type 2 diabetes. So the Democratic senators are up there, and they're complaining that RFK Jr. fired the people at Health and Human Services that have witnessed and been in charge of our children having 74.6% chronic illness. What does that tell you? They were rooting for it. They didn't get high enough for the Democrats in the Senate. They wanted to get to 90% of our kids, the ones they didn't abort. When did the Democrat Party become the party of Satan? When did they turn on us as human beings and root against us, poison our children with vaccines and pharma that just makes them insane? When did the Democrat Party become the party of Satan? And some would argue that the Democrat Party always was the party of Satan from prior to the Civil War, because the Democrat Party was the party of slaveholders. The Democrat Party was the party of the South. The Democrat Party was the party that passed the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, do you know what the Fugitive Slave Act is? Let me tell you what the Fugitive Slave Act is. So this is the Democrats. So the Fugitive Slave Act was this. If a slave escaped from the South, escaped from a slave state to a free state, because there were people in the North, the Republicans, they weren't Republicans yet, but there were people in the North that had free states. So there was the Underground Railroad. So they had a whole way of trying to get human beings out of the slavehood into the free states in the North. The Fugitive Slave Act, passed by sponsored by Democrats, passed by Democrats, said that if a slave escaped to a free state, by federal law, that free state had to arrest the slave and hold them. Does this sound familiar? And hold them until the slave owner or the federal government came and got them. And that law was what founded the Republican Party, because there was an escaped slave named Joshua Glover who was in Wisconsin, and the federal government came after the Fugitive Slave Act passed. They came and got him, arrested him, and they were holding him in a Wisconsin prison. And the white people of Wisconsin, not the black people, the white people of Wisconsin surrounded the prison, and I think the federal marshals that held Joshua Glover in the prison realized that they were about to get slaughterhoused if they didn't release Joshua Glover. You always hear about how bad white, in the South, the Democrats of the South hung black people, but they also hung Republicans. They also hung white Republicans in the South too, right? The Democrats of the slaveholders of the South hung white Republicans too. You never hear about Racine, Wisconsin. You never hear about it. How the white people surrounded the prison, that the federal marshals, the federal marshals enforcing Democrat-passed law, were holding Joshua Glover in prison, and they were going to bring him back to being a slave again. They're going to bring him back to being a slave again. They're going to bring him back to a slave owner. The white people of Racine, Wisconsin surrounded the jail, all of them now breaking federal law, all of them becoming criminals according to the Democrats and the laws they passed, surrounded the prison, and they got Joshua Glover released. And when he was released, they got him to Canada, which used to be a free country, which used to be a free country. But you never hear about that. And, you just never hear about it. But to me, the most important moment of the last 50 years to me is there's two of them. There's two of them. But they kind of go hand in hand. But but I'll give you the 1-2, the 1-2 of where our world is right now. The first punch landed when they put a bullet in John F. Kennedy's head. That to me was the biggest moment in our country's history, in our modern history, and what has led us to where we are today. Because when they put a bullet in Kennedy's head, when they killed Kennedy, and I say they, CIA, mob, Cuba, whoever you want to say killed them, it was our government that killed them, because he was not going to get us into the Vietnam War. He was not going to do it, and he was going to expose government corruption that had already begun heavy into the 60s after Eisenhower. God bless you. So, and he was against the mob. So JFK had some issues. Not the greatest guy. My parents were not big fans of JFK. But when they put a bullet in his head, the heart, the goodness, any part of the Democrat Party that was good was dead. Was dead when that bullet hit his head. And I think LBJ, his vice president, either knew about the assassination or was part of it. And that's who became president. That was the typical Democrat. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Perhaps one of the most decrepit, evil human beings that we've ever had the misfortune to call an American. He set up the government plantations, destroying families, where single mother homes. The only way they made families, single women divorce their men and marry the government. That's not my line. That was somebody else's. But they basically you didn't get any aid for your child unless you were a single mother. So all the men had to be out of the household. How did that work out? The Great Society. So we spent all this money on aid for people, single mothers, and how's it worked out? Generational poverty. Generational poverty is how it's worked out. When the government hands shit out, it's generational poverty. Because the government takes its toll. So you got JFK dead, LBJ pounds us into Vietnam, destroys an entire generation of great Americans, grew up 50s, 60s, having a great life, won the Cold War, fought communism with standstill in Korea, freed millions and millions of people in South Korea, and you have LBJ take over the war. And it's a 100% disaster. And what I guess what I got to go back to is, who is running the media? Because they must have, the communists and the terrible people, the evil people that hate our country, have been running our media since before frickin' time. They sold you a bill of goods that Senator Joe McCarthy was a bad guy. Senator Joe McCarthy wasn't a bad guy. He was not a bad guy. He was self-made. He was a great Horatio Alger story from Wisconsin. He educated himself. He wasn't a country club Joe. He wasn't part of the elite. He wasn't part of the oligarchy. He made himself. He made himself because he was freaking brilliant and he worked hard. And he was 100% right that our government was rife with people that were communists. 100% right on that. And the press destroyed him. Much like they tried to destroy Trump. And the press made sure they destroyed his legacy, even though he was right about like 99% of everything Joe McCarthy said. He was 99% right. but the press destroys. You even have the conservative talk show hosts, Jamie, that talk shit about Joe McCarthy. And it's disgusting. Hey, read a book. Read a book. You're going to get on the air. You're going to talk shit about Joe McCarthy. Why don't you read a book? Honest to God. Just read a book about it. You want to get on the air and talk how kind Muslims are and they make great neighbors. Read a book. Read the Quran. Don't get on the air and spout out platitudes about killer cults and then talk shit about Senator Joe because you're full of crap. Sorry, but you may be right about a lot of things, but wow, when you're wrong, terribly wrong, hard to listen to. Well, it is. I'm just being honest. Felt like I was watching CBS or listening to CBS. And, I've got some people close to me that are big fans. So when I don't control the radio dial, I'm locked into that. And it's hard to listen. It's hard, It's hard when you're sitting there and you're thinking you're listening to somebody on our side and they're talking shit about Senator Joe McCarthy, who 100%, 99% was spot on about the communists in our government and the betrayal that our government was doing for the Red Chinese and for betraying in the State Department. He was spot on about it, betraying our secrets to the Russians and the Chinese. Spot on. You ever want to hear a great story? Look up Venona tapes. Look up the Venona tapes. That would be a great American movie. I'll tell you the story real quick. The Venona tapes were this. Since I'm going to talk about Joe McCarthy, I might as well tell you how I know Joe McCarthy was right about 99.9% of everything he said about the communists in our government. We had broken the Soviet code after World War II. We'd broken it. Eisenhower wasn't the president. Truman was still the president. This was during Joe McCarthy. We'd broken their code. So when the Soviet Union had spies in America, the military was able to track and message all of the Soviet spies in the U.S. Okay, they broke their code. They knew who the spies were. And as Joe McCarthy was going through and trying to tell everybody that there's a ton of spies in our government and in the State Department and all throughout our government, they had cracked the Soviet code. Same time Joe McCarthy's going out and telling everybody that there's Soviet spies within our government had cracked the Soviet code and knew he was 99.9% right. That Joe McCarthy was exposing the traitors in our government. Here was the dilemma. The military didn't want to tell the Soviets that they'd cracked their code. They didn't want to tell them that because they were finding out more and more info about the Soviets by knowing their code and knowing who the spies were, but they couldn't tell our president that they'd cracked the code. They couldn't tell Joe McCarthy that they'd cracked the Soviet code and he was spot on. They couldn't tell him. Why? Why couldn't they tell President Truman that they had cracked the Soviet code? The President of the United States, you're a captain in an intelligence corps in the Army. You've cracked the Soviet code, and you don't tell the President Truman, you don't tell the President that you've cracked the Soviet code. You know why? Do you know why they didn't tell President Truman? I'll tell you why. Because President Truman, I'm going to get the names wrong, President Truman had a spy in his administration. And they knew it. They knew he was a spy. They had the code. They saw the messages going back and forth to the Soviet Union. They told President Truman that one of his cabinet members was not to be trusted. Like, he was not a good guy. Do not, this guy is not a good guy, Harry. Don't promote him. You should probably fire him. He's not a good guy. They couldn't tell him why. They could not tell Truman why. Could not. Because Truman was the one that put him in his cabinet. Do you understand? Like, he left this into the cabinet of the United States, and the captain of the army is going like, well, like, you brought in a communist into your cabinet. Like, why the hell should we trust you? And makes perfect sense to me. And the second you tell Truman, thought being, the second you tell the President of the United States that you've broken the Soviet code, whether he means it to go right back to the Soviet Union or not, it's going to go right back to the Soviet Union. You can't not go back, because he's going to tell a cabinet member, he's going to tell a cabinet that they've broken the code. So they don't tell him. And then the media comes out, destroys Joe McCarthy, his career's over. And then by that time, I guess the Soviets figured out that they'd broken the code. And this is what the thing called the Pumpkin Papers, where the people that Joe McCarthy had accused of being Soviet traitors, they'd buried the evidence that they were traitors out in their backyard in a pumpkin. And they were able to find that pumpkin and prove that Joe McCarthy was 99.9% right about the traitors and the communists in our government. And they still talk shit, and they, somehow the media managed to still talk shit about Joe McCarthy. Oh well. They destroyed the man. They destroyed a great American in Joe McCarthy. And if you ever have a chance to, I forget the name of the book, The Black Pages or whatever, but it tells a very fair story about who Senator Joe McCarthy was. He was a great American, and talking shit about him if you're a conservative is just a terrible, terrible place to be. Talk shit about Margaret Sanger. Talk shit about people that kill Americans. Talk shit about, the State Department that betrayed Chiang Kai-shek in China. Talk shit about people that are bad. Don't talk shit about people that tried to fight the fight and got destroyed in the process. Do better. Don't talk positive about cults that marry 9-year-old girls. Don't talk great about cults that think it's okay to rape the women of non-believers. Why don't you just educate yourself on what you're talking about? I didn't see the show going there. I'll be honest with you. I didn't see it. So let's go back to the sentient moment. Kennedy, assassinated. LBJ takes over. Great society. Ups the war in Vietnam. Gets more and more. We had a draft back then, so more and more of our kids are getting killed. Everybody's focused on whether or not they're getting drafted. People are trying to get out of the draft that have money. People are trying to get out of the draft that don't have money. People are enlisting because they know they're going to get drafted. They're enlisting so they can have some say of where they're going in Vietnam. And our boys fight like hell in Vietnam. Fight like hell. It's not a generation raised. These are draft kids coming out of like, this is a generation, this is a peace generation. The Korean War, I don't think the Korean War took as many. I don't even know if we had a draft. I'm sure we did, but the Korean conflict was not that broad. There weren't that many people that got drafted for the Korean conflict, I don't believe. But the Vietnam War reaches right down and touches everybody. And that's all because of LBJ. It's all because of LBJ. It's all because they put a bullet in Kennedy's head. It's all because the Democrats are running a shit show like they would have done, like they did during Biden, like they were going to do under Kamala. They run a shit show of death, mayhem, and murder. And if it hadn't been for the Trumpers, if it hadn't been for January 6th, if it hadn't been for the blood sacrifice of the 5 Americans, the 5 patriots that died on January 6th in D.C., my guess is Trump would not be president. So shout out to the January 6th, the people that gave it all, the people that got in prison, the people that went to jail. God bless you. God bless you. Their sacrifice, their punishment is something that we've all are enjoying right now, and we're going to enjoy it more next year when that big, beautiful bill takes an impact and it affects all our lives. I would tell you that the Democrats still control the Federal Reserve because they don't want prosperity for you. They don't want interest rates to come down, even though inflation is down. They don't want you to be able to buy a home. They don't want you to walk the streets safe. They don't want any of the things that a Judeo-Christian society based on capitalism and a free republic would give you. They don't want you to have it because it takes away their power. It takes away you being their minion. It gives you freedom, but it takes away their power because when you have freedom, they lose power. When you have wealth, they lose power. And they want your wealth. They want your wealth. So, Kennedy, bullet in the head. LBJ. Ups the Vietnam War. Creates a great society. Emboldens the government spending. Emboldens it. There's no place in the Constitution for the Great Society. There's just no place for it. But another Democrat, FDR, gotten Social Security through. So after JFK's assassination, the Democrats go crazy and grow the government to leaps and bounds that they just basically give out all these things to people, and the government grows and grows and grows. And that's it. That's where it starts. And then the other coup de grace for the forces of Satan that are still affecting us today was the oil embargo of 1972, OPEC, when they founded OPEC. So we elect Nixon, but then OPEC turns around and does a kick in the groin to America by embargoing oil to America. So like it comes out of nowhere. The oil embargo comes out of nowhere. There's traffic lines everywhere, and you can't buy oil. Like we're using more oil from Saudi Arabia because it's just so cheap to get. It's right out of the ground. Like it's so close to the ground level, so you don't have to drill that far. It's flowing great. It's great oil. So we're using the crap out of it, and they embargo us. They create the oil petroleum exporting nations, and they embargo the U.S. from oil. Completely screw us. They raise the price of a barrel of oil from, like $5 an oil to $20 a barrel in one day, like in a week, a month. And all of a sudden, your cost of doing everything in America jumps through the roof because we hadn't drilled for enough oil with World War II, so we hadn't drilled for enough to be able to replace what we were importing because importing it was so cheap. So we're screwed. But here's what's worse than that. We're now sending billions of dollars to Muslim countries that hate us, that hate Christianity, that hate our world, that hate who we are and what we have. And what do they do with that money? They turn around and give it to our universities so that they can educate or miseducate and propagandize communism, Islam. Is this all sounding familiar? Like you're living in this world? Because that's the world we're living in right now. That's the world we're fighting. But we're not fighting that world yet. We're not fighting it. We're not fighting. We're not attacking it. We're not attacking that world Trump is he's trying to backdoor it by increasing our energy. So we don't need the Middle East energy anymore. And maybe he'll get around to it maybe after the midterms. And this is kind of what I'm hoping. I'm praying that maybe after the midterms, when there's a force that can't be defeated, maybe after midterms, we address the media that defends the death of our country and lies to you every single day about Chicago. You know, they just lied to you about the vaccine, they lied to you about COVID and wearing masks. They just lie, and they are a weapon of destruction. The media is a weapon of mass destruction for your freedom. That's what they are. 100. You can write that one down. The media is a weapon of mass destruction for your freedom. And they're funded by pharma. They're funded by the Muslim countries, the petrol countries, whatever you want to call them. But they're funded by people that hate our guts. We had forefathers that spilled their guts so I could get on the air and tell you this. Right? If they hadn't done that, we'd be under the caliphate that England is under right now. We'd be there. They'd already have turned the king. They would have turned our king, and they would be arresting me right now for talking shit about Islam. Even though the quote-unquote prophet of Islam married a 9-year-old girl and had sex with her before puberty. And when he was 54. They'd be arresting me for saying that. Even though it's the truth. And the Muslims will tell you that. But they'd be arresting me for saying it. Think about that. That's what's happening in England right now. Japan has a very interesting way of handling Islam. And I don't even know, but this is where we're at. Put a bullet in Kennedy's head, and here we are battling for the very soul of our country from 50 years ago, and here we are today, and here I am on the show. That's the battle, kids. Grab some popcorn, say a prayer to Jesus Christ, because that battle ain't over. That battle ain't over. Pray for Trump. Pray for your Christian leaders. Pray for your Jewish leaders. Pray that the creator of the universe helps us win this battle, because let me tell you who's going to suffer if we don't win this battle. All right, everybody. That's my show for today. I'm going to go out and have a great weekend. What time is it? 11:45? Oh, no, I'll tell you what. So I do want to share one last thing with you before I go. Do you think when we leave this world, do you think our rewards in heaven will be anything like earthly rewards? Do you think it'll be like the best fruit you've ever eaten, a great steak? Do you think anything in heaven is going to be, and I shouldn't say this because I think some things are in heaven are a little bit, but do you think it's going to be like the greatest steak you ever had, or say 72 virgins? Do you think the creator of the universe is going to somehow enslave women for you killing non-believers? Do you think that's going to be, you think that's the creator of the universe? Like that's the kind of person or being he is, that he rewards you for killing other people by enslaving women to be your sex pleasurers? You think that's the mental thing? And why do we accept this? Why do we accept this as civilization? Why do we accept this as being permissible to be taught in our schools, to our children? What weakness of us mentally, and I tell you, it's because they lie to you. They lie to you about what Islam is. You've got to educate yourself. You've got to be on the force for what's right for our future. You've got to be on this force, and if you're not going to be on the force, then you've at least got to get out of the way. Don't defend the indefensible. Don't attack the people trying to save this world from the indefensible. Don't do it. If you're going to stand on the sideline and be weak, then stand on the sideline and be weak. But do not defend the indefensible. Don't do it. Don't attack the people trying to save this world. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Joe Finn out. And now, if I can get my little thing back, we'll listen to some music, and we will get the heaven out of here. And today, as I ended this show,
the people all complain. Stephen Osborne